Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher here alongside Adam Caplan, doing what we always do, bringing you another edition of Inside the Birds, and we've got a ton to get to. And I keep saying that every week. We have a ton to get into. I keep thinking that things are going to slow down and there's not going to be that much news. But Howie Roseman had a conference call that Adam and I are going to kind of dissect a little bit. There's some rumors out there facing the Eagles and some guys they want to sign maybe later in free agency. We'll talk about that. We'll get into some contracts and some things that Adam particularly noticed that he finds really interesting. So we got a pretty comprehensive podcast here. We're going to start like we always have. You know, we're all in this thing together with the coronavirus outbreak, and Adam and I just want to wish everybody great health. Hope you're staying inside and being safe and sound. And we want to thank everybody from the doctors, nurses, medical people, law enforcement, military, first responders, teachers, delivery people, anybody who's got to work right now in the essential places doing their part. We sincerely appreciate all of your service and your help. And, you know, we just want to let you know that we're thinking about you along with everybody who's in quarantine right now, like Adam and I are. So with that being said, we're going to get off to a start right here and get right into Howie Roseman's conference call, Adam, because you listened to the whole thing. I listened to the whole thing while it was going on. And some of the things I thought were curious and interesting. And I think we should probably get into that. If I were to ask you, Adam, your biggest takeaway from Howie's conference call, it would be what?
There are a lot of them. Well, Geoff, I would not say there was any news coming out of it. There was a lot that was worth discussing. I mean, we're not going to spend the whole show here on this, but I wanted to make it the first thing because typically these are about 25, 30 minutes. He went about 50. And Geoff, I thought the big thing was he didn't shy away from the DeAndre Hopkins talk that they were in it. And it sure sounds like what the ask was, and he used the ask. That's what people do when they're looking for something. The ask from the Texans to get compensation back was different, obviously, than the Cardinals had to give up. Now, I don't know this is a fact, but my sense is that he probably asked for a running back, and you know who that running back is.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If you were Howie Roseman and Bill O'Brien said, okay, we'll trade you Hopkins, we want Miles Sanders and a first-round pick, would you do that?
No, I wouldn't. I know probably people would criticize me for saying that, but first of all, the Cardinals, did they give up a first-round pick? I don't remember. It was
the second-round pick. They gave a
second-round pick, right?
Right, and they got a fourth back, I think, with Hopkins.
Yeah, Miles Sanders is on a rookie deal and has already shown to put up the numbers in year one that he could be as good, if not better, than David Johnson. So to have to give up Miles Sanders and a first-round pick, to me, would be more of an asking price than even Arizona gave up. So I would not be willing to do it. I would not be willing in general to part with all of that because, again, you have to part with your top draft pick. You can't get the wide receiver you want. And then also you have to now you need a running back again. And we talked all last year about how much they needed a running back that fits Doug's system. And you lose the cost control that you have for a few years on Miles Sanders. Then you have to renegotiate and make DeAndre Hopkins the highest paid wide receiver when you've already got all this money, dead money, probably going to Alshon Jeffrey to not play for you and Deshaun Jackson to play one more year. Look, I know it's tantalizing. I know it's great. But as you and I have said all along, it's also good to build upon young wide receivers that you can draft. It's an incredible draft for wide receivers. To me, the price would have been too high if that were the price.
Yeah, so when you look at what the cost would have been, my sense is it clearly was prohibitive. Whatever the ask was, they weren't going to do it. I agree with you. I would not give up. I would not give up Sanders. Now, would I give up Derek Barnett and a first round pick? Yeah, in a heartbeat. Would I give up Derek Barnett, a first round pick, and Nick Gary? Yeah. Could I give up somebody else in there depending on who the player is? Yeah, but I'm not giving up Miles Sanders. You might. Now I know when it's apples to apples. If you just look at value to player, Hopkins is arguably the NFL's best receiver. But what Geoff just said, and I want to add to it, is every NFL team is given a cash budget to start the new league year. The cap has nothing to do with it. It's what it's the cap is the constraints that you have to work under in terms of contract structure, and you have to get it in around a certain number. The cash is king. That's all that matters to NFL teams is cash.
Right.
So what you would basically have to, because remember that the Hopkins situation was never counted into their cash budget. This thing just came about. Hargrave was the guy that they wanted, they got. Okay. Byron Jones was the other guy that they wanted. They didn't get him, but they got the next guy up. So their big spending was done. Mm-hmm. So as Geoff said, and he's right, you're talking about. By the way, Cooper got $20 million a year, and the structure was incredibly team friendly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Hopkins and you want a new deal, you're going to ask for $22 million a year.
Right.
Well, this is just not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're going to have to. The amount of cash that you're putting out for the future is not what you want. I know people don't want to hear that, but that's the way you work. And there might be some other opportunities to come up here in trades before the draft. Who knows?
Right.
So
I'm glad you said that, because that would lead into my takeaway from the press conference, or from Howie's conference call, is that a lot of people have looked at all their cap space. I think it's around 20 million or whatever, and said, why aren't the Eagles spending money? And Howie, on several different occasions in that conference call, said, I'm not just thinking about this year. I'm thinking about years to come. And what we have right now, this is what really jumped out to me, and I want people to really understand it. He said, what we have right now is not reflective of what we have beyond this year and then the year after and the year after. This is something you've brought up a lot, Adam. They are not under the cap next year or the year after. They will be up against it with a lot of salaries that double or triple. And as you and I know, and some of our listeners too, that when you have money, you can carry it over into the following year.
Cap space, yes.
Cap space, correct. So if the cap is 200 million, but you've carried over 220, you technically have 220 million to spend. And it sounded to me like Howie was saying, I have the money now. I'm going to need some to carry over, because we have to deal with a lot of high salaries of good players. Guys like Zach Ertz and Brandon Brooks and Fletcher Cox, they all have enormous Lane Johnson cap numbers.
And by the way,
Alshon, who might have to strangle some of it.
Right. So they since free agency started, they rolled over, let's see, 12 club options on players.
Mm-hmm.
I think 8 of them, the options were fully guaranteed anyway, but these type of situations play into it, because next year, these cap numbers, because of all these restructures, Geoff, are going way up. We outlined this a couple shows ago. And later in the show, if we have time, we're going to go over a couple contracts, which I found interesting. Mm-hmm. So if you get Hopkins, to finish this off here, it's going to blow your cash budget out. It's just, and then obviously your future cap, the first year of an extension, obviously. Oh, by the way, he wants a new deal, man. He wants he wants a brand new deal here.
You said it. You said it. Cooper makes 20 million. You probably have to pencil him for 22 to 25.
Yeah, you're going to have to give him a new deal. You have to rip it up, give him a new one. Yeah, it's just not going to work. I get it. It's because you see what the Cardinals gave up to get Hopkins. You're like, couldn't we do that?
Right.
It's not the same thing. I get it, though. I get the reaction.
Now, I want to get into something Howie said that didn't make sense to me, and run this by you as well, and we should talk about it. It was a question in response to why he didn't do more to address wide receiver and free agency, specifically at a time when the prices weren't as high as they were expected. And Howie's answer, Adam, was that at the time that they made their plans for free agency and decided in what directions they were going to go in, they were expecting, like the rest of the league, that wide receivers were going to ask for and get significantly more than they were worth. Guys like Robbie Anderson, guys like Brashad Perriman, I'm sure I'm forgetting a name in there. And he said that when it came to be that they didn't, but that the Eagles had already spent their money on Darius Slay and Javon Hargrave and yada, yada. Now, do I understand that? Yes. Do I feel like that's a cop-out? A little bit, because I would say this about Howie. He's always been excellent at reading the market and at taking advantage when a market isn't as steep at a certain position. You go back to when he signed Alshon Jeffrey to a 1-year deal. It's because the market for that Jeffrey was looking for was not there. I don't understand why a good general manager of Howie's caliber wouldn't capitalize when the market is a lot less than expected in their planning.
Also though, as we reported at the combine, they weren't going to get involved. It wasn't. I don't think it was just because of where they thought the market was going to go. If you look at Robbie Anderson's deal, Geoff, the Panthers could get out after 1 year and owe him absolutely nothing. It has a 1 year structure. It's a two-year deal. The guarantees are paid in year one. They owe him $10 million. They owe him a total of $12 million.
Right.
$10 million of it's fully guaranteed at signing, and they could get out of it. All they have is proration for the second year, $2 million.
Yep.
So quite frankly, they could really get out of this thing with little or no penalty. So if you're the Eagles, would Robbie Anderson solve the issue for you for this season? Absolutely, with speed. But the way the league look at this player is they didn't trust him. They just didn't trust teams around the National Football League did not trust Robbie Anderson. Right. Or he would have got a much better deal. And who rescued him? His former college coach, Matt Rule in Carolina.
Right. So I can understand that, right? Because again, that's a lot of money. Even with the market not being where Robbie wanted it to, that's still a lot of money for an unproven guy. $12 million 1 year for a guy who maybe runs two routes. But why couldn't Howie then look at the other guys, the guys who went on 1 year deals, whether it was Philip Dorsett or DeMarcus Robin, who just signed for 2.25. We named a couple of receivers, Brashad even. Why couldn't the market for a 1 year deal that's less than 3 or 4 million? Why wouldn't he take a bite on that?
I would have done it. Quite frankly, I would have done it. Permit, especially because he's bigger physically. You'd rather get if you're just gonna line both guys up. Obviously, Anderson's way more productive. But if you look at the upside of both, it's not even close. Perman's got way more upside. We'll see if he can develop. Right now, by the way, for the first time in his career, he's projected to be a full-time starter. Right. Depending on what the Jets do in the draft. I think as we move on here, I still think that they had some serious questions about paying these guys, and I think what we talked about now. God, has it been 4 weeks since the combine? When was the combine?
Let's see. Well, it ended in March 3rd or 4th, right?
Okay,
you were there for so long. You were probably there at the end of February.
I know. God, you're right. It ended on the 2nd of March.
Right.
It's now we're basically 4 weeks away from that.
Yeah.
I think the Eagles really looked at it the same way. They looked at it, particularly with Anderson, as like the player, as a talent. He's only does one thing really, really well. Has an injury history. There's some questions here how he'll handle money, and we don't trust him though. But when I talk to the Jets, they made it clear they wanted him back, but they obviously, by the way, their value on the player was even less than the Panthers was. How about that?
Yeah, how about it? And once they probably realized they could get Perriman for half the money, they probably had no issue getting letting Robbie Anderson walk.
Yeah, and they're relatively around the same age, so yeah, it's a pretty fast situation.
So is it scary as we move on to the next thing that Howie said that kind of perked or made my eyebrows read? He was asked about the cornerback, the whole secondary and the additions and how much better this team can be on the back end. And the first thing Howie did was mention helping the back end by adding Javon Hargrave and padding the front end. Now we know that that's their philosophy, build up front, build in the trenches, but it was kind of, I don't want to call it damning with faint praise or anything, but he's asked about the secondary and he says, oh yeah, our secondary is going to be better because we have a pass rush that should be better. Well,
but the comment that I was surprised that he made it, we all got what he meant. I wonder if the Eagles website might have put the call on there. They put the player calls on the website, but what he said was, I think he said Howie was sick and tired of seeing balls thrown over the DB's head.
Yes, he did. He said
that. How about that one? I was like, it's funny. So I don't, when I listen to these calls, that's what I do. I don't talk. I put it on mute and I'm just working, listening. I actually stopped what I was doing. I was like, oh my goodness, did he just say that?
And he repeated it too. He said it twice.
And by the way, he's not wrong. So
no. I mean, it's just rare that he speaks the way we and the fans do,
Yeah. So look, and Howie, something got into him. He goes, let's be transparent. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
About a bunch of subjects, I was like, wow, I wonder what got into his crawl.
Right.
And it's very apparent that the great Brett Strosacker, their lead PR guys, clearly made him Howie aware of what's been out there in the media and probably some of the fans' comments.
Right.
So that's fine. Look, good. He addressed it. I was a little bit surprised. And by the way, the statistics and the tape show the same thing. The coverage against opposing receivers, there's really been no team worse giving up big plays since 2014. But the funny thing is, they're so much better at home, which is just bizarre to me. On the road, it's kind of like the Sixers on the road, the home and road splits. I don't quite understand it. It's really the same thing.
I know it's now becoming a Philadelphia thing instead of just the Sixers or an Eagles thing.
Crazy, man. Anyway,
so he said one more thing on the secondary that I think gave some clarity to the situation as we sit here today before the draft. He certainly made it sound like the team and the staff believes that Avonte Maddox can play the outside corner if need be. And he also said that Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas are not in the same situation. He kind of made it seem like Sidney still has a chance to compete to be what he was supposed to be. And Rasul, he basically said, is in the same boat that he's been without saying it that way. He just kind of said he's our backup right now. But it sounds like the staff is going to give Sidney one last shot here to prove his worth.
Yeah, so with Sidney, he'll be a restricted free agent after the season because of the amount of time he spent on NFI. You go on NFI, the non-football injury list, you have a pre-existing injury at the time that you're drafted. So I'm told that he will be at least the Eagles' understanding is that he's going to be restricted. Yeah, it sure sounds like Roseman said he put him on the spot. He said Sidney's got to do it, that he's going to get a chance. Douglas is certainly on the final year of his deal. He'll be unrestricted. We've talked about him ad nauseum. Now, okay, so let's say Maddox, right now, before they head into the draft, it's going to be between Maddox and Jones on the outside, opposite Slay. The good thing about this competition is we don't need to see Sidney Jones in the slot anymore. Enough. Definitely that was a complete mistake. Out of necessity, they were doing it. Part of it's because Maddox got hurt. And when you look at Roby Coleman, he's a good football player. He's very aggressive and fairly athletic. He is small. He's around 5'7" and a half. Okay. So just understand he's on a minimum deal. He's on a 1-year deal. This is his third team in 3 years. You're always concerned about that, but he's a good football player. He had a good year last year, but the Rams were not going to pay him the rest of his contract, so they declined his option.
Right.
So now, so moving forward here, it's Slay, it's Maddox or Jones. And Roby Coleman will be expected to be the slot. Crayvon LeBlanc will be the backup slot. Your safety, the only thing we know is Rodney McLeod will start at one safety spot. I have no idea. They don't know. No one knows it's going to start opposite him. It may be a non-traditional alignment. As Howie said on the call, it's no longer your free safety is deep middle. Your safety, your strong safety like Jaquan Jarrett is in the box. Those days are over. And it's positional versatility, and the good thing is we've been telling you for a while, this defense could go through some significant changes, not just in personnel and scheme. Yeah, it's going to be a wide 9, but for the first time, probably, well, certainly in the last 2 years, pre-snap and post-snap movement and disguise is going to be what everyone associated with the way the defense is run, starting with the front office, the coaches, anyone who grades tape. This is the first year that you're going to see disguise because the legitimate argument based on tape study was Eagles defense was so predictable. Teams knew exactly what they were getting because they didn't disguise. Because you know why? He didn't have the personnel. I'll defend on Schwartz on this note, but there are no more excuses. They're going to have enough there to win.
Right. Yeah, I think you make a great point about how the secondary is going to be deployed as we sit here and talk about it today. Let's say when they're playing the Giants and Joe Judge kinds of run an offense similar to what Belichick does, where he's not afraid to use a fullback or puts a couple of tight ends on the field. You could see Will Parks in that role in the box and McLeod deep. But if they play a team that's more like them, more like I shouldn't say them, more like Andy Reid, that's more like a 11 personnel, 3 receiver set, pass catching tight end, you could see maybe Jalen Mills getting in there a little bit more for his coverage on the tight end. So we'll see.
Right,
at least they have some kind of versatility there.
They do. That's it. You just hit on it. It's the versatility. LeBlanc, Howie mentioned in passing, he could play safety. He's done it before. If you need to have him on the field, if you want to go big nickel or double dime, you could do that. There's certain things that you can do with personnel. That the only thing I'll defend Schwartz is that he didn't have the personnel that he really needed. And quite frankly, the coaching, the D line, we've called it out. It's not been very good. It's not just the receiver position. Having 5 guys in 6 years, that obviously is a problem. But you went through Chris Wilson, Phillip Daniels. now you're going to have your own guys. You're going to have two guys who coached for you before in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
The two guys that he knows run the defensive line room. There are really no more excuses. It's got to happen this year because and by the way, we haven't got to the draft yet. Believe me, folks, they're going to dress more defense this is again, to summarize, free agency is about immediate needs. The draft is about the future. It's with hopefully these guys will help you in year one.
Absolutely. I want to get into addressing some of the rumors that are out there about moves the Eagles can still make.
There's some funny ones out there.
There are definitely some interesting ones. Before we do that, though, really want to tell people about DraftKings. They're back. I want to tell people if there's no sports, that's not a problem because DraftKings Sportsbook has an endless amount of casino games to play from the comfort and safety of your own home. And right now, all first-time casino players on DraftKings Sportsbook can get up to $200 to play risk-free for the first 24 hours after downloading and signing up. So you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now, find the casino games in the top navigation bar to start playing. You want games? You got them. You got slots, you got blackjack, roulette, live dealer games, and more. DraftKings is a legal and safe and secure gaming app. You can deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Plus, DraftKings has new promotions every day, so be sure to check the app daily. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code ITB to play up to $200 of casino games risk-free. That's promo code ITB inside the birds to play up to $200 risk-free for your first 24 hours of casino play on DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 and older. New Jersey restrictions apply. New Jersey only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get into rumors, Adam. Where do you want to start? It's like this is almost like spin the wheel. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, LeSean McCoy.
Yeah, it's been funny. We've got a lot of because what's happening is these, I don't know what to call them, fake reporters or these fan websites. Look, I'm a former blogger, so I'm defensive about it.
No, that's a good point.
But I'm good. But the bloggers who don't know how to report. There's a character on Twitter. I'm not going to say his name. That does occasionally. The guy's been defrauded. I mean, he's been. There's a guy that has a Twitter account who also bought a lot of followers. I'm not going to say who the guy is because I'm not going to give the guy the time of day. But every once in a while, one of the 50 rumors he puts out there would turn out to be true. Mm-hmm. I gotta. So if I'm not mistaken, before we get to McCoy. Did you not put something out on what was the receiver's name that might be with the Chiefs?
Sammy Watkins. Yeah, I had no idea that I was taking on an institution. By the way, I didn't even know that that's who put out the original tweet. I guess the site is called @IncarceratedBob.
Yeah,
I don't follow. I didn't know of him. Somebody emailed me and asked me, "What do you think of this rumor?" And then I went on Twitter, and a couple of people asked me the same thing. So. Yeah. I just looked into it. I have some good sources with the Chiefs, and I was told that there was no truth to that. I mean, he's still under contract, and his to trade for him would be ridiculous. I mean, you hear Howie talking about not taking on money, and the money is big. Didn't know,
Geoff, real quick, you have a better chance to be traded for than this kid. Right. Sammy Watkins. First of all, they want to cut his pay. I'm told around in half. I'm told it's not done yet. And here's another thing I thought was comical. I just ignored them all because I know there was no truth to it. I didn't even have to. I just know the way the Eagles think. They are so trying to go away from guys who have an injury history. Mm-hmm. Sammy Watkins was severely overdrafted by the general manager of the Bills back then. I think it might have been Buddy Nix. It just never worked out. A good football player, by the way, high character guy. He's a number 2, not a number 1. Mm-hmm. Look, if he's on the market, there's no guaranteed money left in his contract, by the way.
Right.
But let's say for argument's sake that he's released. The Eagles didn't want Robbie Anderson. I mean, if the kid's willing to take $3 million, I could see a team wanting him.
Right.
But they're doing their best to learn from mistakes with the injured guys, and go away from that. At every level, it makes no sense. And pretty much what we outlined at the Combine has been true so far. Yeah, the only one that surprised me, though, I did say that they want Rod McLeod back, and we'll get to his contract. Yeah, but it's pretty much they've done what they said they were going to do. They've addressed some issues. They've got some left, but bringing in guys with injury histories, I don't see it at all.
Right. Now, speaking of injury history, a guy that you have brought up in the past, Joe Flacco, This is obviously a position that the Eagles will look at bringing a veteran quarterback. McCown, you have said, is going to take a while to make his decision.
June.
So what do we know? What have you heard on Joe Flacco and his availability?
Here's what I know as we drop this Monday morning. The Eagles have interest in him. They're still going through it. They do have 3 quarterbacks on the roster under contract. Wentz, Sudfeld, who signed a 1-year, $2 million deal. Kyle Lauletta, by the way, Lauletta, he's put some mass on in terms of physical strength. He's got bigger physically. He's in that incubator of the Eagles when they bring quarterbacks in. You saw it with Sudfeld when he came here in 2017 to Philly. You know how he developed, though he's got to get back to where he was. Lauletta's a guy that they like, obviously from Downingtown. He had a great Senior Bowl. That's what got him overdrafted, but he's got some ability. But I'm told they would like to add a veteran quarterback to the competition, whether it be McCown, who they still have interest in, or Flacco. If Flacco gets signed by any team or whatever you call it, an agreement, because you're not going to be able to it's tricky how you get a physical done.
Right.
I expect that to happen this week. So one way or the other, we're going to find out.
Okay.
And remember, Nate Sudfeld, as much as I've always liked Nate, he's never started an NFL game. And that's
right.
With Carson Wentz's injury history, I just find it hard to believe that they would go into the season with Nate Sudfeld as a starter, not having started a game of the regular season. Now, it's not unprecedented. Brian Hoyer was Tom Brady's backup as an undrafted free agent. But now when you look down the line and how important it is to have experience at the backup quarterback position, it's just not the way the Eagles do things here. And I would expect them to continue to look hard at it. And I don't put percentages on anything, but I think there's a realistic chance that one of these two guys comes in. And if not, maybe look at Trevor Siemian, or somebody who we taught. Siemian's a good backup, by the way.
If Joe Flacco is healthy, now we get into the situation where fans get very, what's the word I'm looking for? They only remember what they saw last, right? Some people are going to be like,
bias,
God.
Recency bias.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Joe Flacco, oh man, he's bouncing around. Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback is probably as good as you can do in this game. I mean, remember that Nick Foles also went through some really high highs and really low lows before he was thrust into the starting job in 2017 and won a Super Bowl. If you could get Joe Flacco as a backup in this offense with these receivers, I don't know if you could do much better than that as a backup.
And the Rich Scangrello, who coached them last season, obviously he's on the Eagles staff, so that doesn't hurt.
Marty Morningweg.
Marty Morningweg, yeah. So look, you saw in Chicago with the 3 coaches who had experience with Nick Foles, the head coach, the quarterback coach, and the OC. So it does matter.
Right.
We'll see what happens there. So Flacco with his neck. I mentioned a couple shows ago, teams are under the impression that he'll be able to I guess they've seen his recent scans. I don't know how they know this, but my sense is teams know that he'll be able to pass the physical. I know the Broncos they turned in failed physical, but it's just a matter of, does he have surgery or not surgery? When he'd be ready wherever he goes. And again, with McCown, he's going to be ready. Everybody thinks in June. So one way or the other, I expect him to bring a veteran. They're not, when you look, before we move on here, Geoff, when you look at the veterans that are available, guys who have meaningful starting experience, the Eagles they have no interest in Jameis Winston or Cam Newton. We talked about Flacco. We talked about McCown. Mike Glennon, forget it. Blake Bortles, no. Blaine Gabbert, I'm told, probably will go back to Tampa. Then it's Geno Smith, who, by the way, they didn't like in the 2012 draft, was it, or 2013? That's an interesting story. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I gotta be honest. It'll probably not. As you said, no interest. It's probably not going to happen. He'll probably get a job with more money somewhere. But I would love to see Doug Peterson and his staff get their hands on Cam Newton.
My God, that would be so cool.
I would love it. I would love it. Now, I mean, again, that's a lot of money. You're probably going to have to pay for a back, even more so than your typical backup. And it causes issues, I know, for guys who have starters to have to look over their shoulder at a guy like Cam Newton, who's been won an MVP, who's still young. It's not like Flacco, who's definitely on the twilight.
35, he's 35.
Yeah. Flacco. But, man, I would love it. But that's obviously a dream scenario.
Well, it's a different offense. See, the thing is, it's like, how are you going to run a drop-back game with Cam? I think the Chargers makes a lot of sense because of the type of offense they're going to run with Tyrod Taylor.
Sure.
With Flacco or Jameis Winston, it's a drop-back offense. You're not going to be asking Jameis doesn't move very well. Joe is 35.
Right.
Wherever Joe goes, if it's Philly, if it's the Jets, it's somewhere else, who needs a backup, you want to make sure that you have a scheme that works for them. And having Scangarello on the staff helps, and they know Josh McCown very well. By the way, Josh has also got a decision to make. If he does retire, I know that I'm going to say around the Super Bowl, I'd heard that they certainly would have interest in adding him to their coaching staff if he decides to retire. But, of course, they filled out all these jobs already. But then again, the Eagles seem to have an assistant to the assistant to the assistant. So
that's right. All right, so I have an update on Vinny Curry.
Oh, yeah. What's up with him?
All right, so here's the deal. Vinny is obviously still a free agent, and nothing has changed as far as the teams that have been interested. There are several, more than you can count on one hand, that have all inquired about him. What I've found out is that you go back to 2017 when they win the Super Bowl. Vinny gets released as a cap casualty. He signs just a few days later with Tampa Bay to the big contract, and then that year was a disaster for him. So
he got hurt, right?
Yeah, he got hurt. He didn't, the whole defensive line was different. They didn't rotate. It was just a whole different culture that he did not really love. So this time around, I was told he is definitely weighing more options. Now, he did that last year too. He went and took a visit to Cincinnati, but now with the inability to visit teams, and I don't know how long that could go on for a long time, but I know that Vinny is taking a lot more time to make sure that he finds the right situation because he doesn't have to be rushed. He has a lot of teams that have looked into him. He said definitely before the draft.
Well, what he has to understand, because in Philly, he's a third end. No one's beating him out for that role.
Yes.
He did a good job last year. He stayed healthy, and he's such a great guy. They love him. He loves them. The great thing is he knows the scheme, so he doesn't – it's not like Eagles are to the left. He knows exactly the left side of the ledger. He knows what they are. It's everybody else. It's every other team. You're right. Because if you don't have the right D-line coach, if your players talk, if he finds out that the D-line coach that a particular team is interested in him, that this guy's not good, they probably want to go there. And by the way, they have another new set of coaches in the D-line room for the Eagles, and that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so he definitely still holds the Eagles in high esteem, and they are definitely still interested. So we'll kind of have to monitor as it goes along there. But he's not rushing. But before the draft, I know that obviously you don't want to sign after the draft. You want to sign before the draft, before teams start replacing you, the idea of you with somebody that they pick. So we'll probably 2 or 3 more weeks. We'll see.
Well, Jeff, if you look at it really quick, so it's Barnett and Graham. Under contract, you've got Josh Sweat, who's a fourth end, not a third end. He definitely improved last season. But you just don't know what his upside is.
Yeah.
Jernard Avery is a complete wild card. He was an off-season project. Sharif Miller never played last season. Joe Osman, ACL. Deshaun Hall, ACL.
Right.
They don't have any quality depth on this at the end is really lacking.
Sure.
They're going to have to do something. They don't have a choice. They have to bring somebody in.
And one thing to remember, Vinny had such a good December used in that nickel package inside. And I've heard him say many times, someone's going to have to, all these guys that we mentioned, the Averys, the Sweats, the Sharif Millers, they got to beat him out because he had the December to remember compared to everybody else. So he's got that in his pocket. All right. Let's move on. I want to bring up some of those contract details from the guys that they've signed. But before we do that, Adam, I just want to pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. The Earn Your Leisure podcast, hosted by Rashard Bilal and Troy Millings, examines the latest trends in finance. Listen as the duo interviews entrepreneurs from various industries as they break down their business models and share some of their hardships and triumphs that they've experienced along the way. Want to learn about the real estate game? Unclear how the stock market works? They gotcha. Interested in starting a truck company, vending machine business, or investing in the mobile home market? Then check them out as they've got you covered. Earn Your Leisure is a college business class mixed with pop culture. So if you want to become better equipped in business, Head over to Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and follow the Earn Your Leisure podcast today so you never miss an episode. All right, Adam. Obviously, the biggest change happened in the secondary. Darius Slay, they traded for him, redid his contract. Mills comes back on a new contract. Will Parks. They got the linebacker, Jatavis Brown, and then they signed. And Rodney McLeod. You said there was something interesting about Rodney McLeod's deal. So why
I'm shocked. I get that wrong. I thought for sure. Okay, I thought for sure Ronnie's deal. It was good. I knew it would be a 1 or 2 year deal, but I thought for sure it'd be a 1 year structure. It does not have a 1 year structure.
Wow.
And I learned a little bit why they did. And I'll get into a second. But his 2 year deal is worth just over $8.5 million. So the way they did it is $3 million signing bonus. His base salary is the minimum for his years of service, $1.05 million. But the guaranteed number is $7.8 million. It's the signing bonus, the first year base, and the second year base is fully guaranteed. So Geoff,
what's his salary in year 2?
I mean, $375 is enough. And I know. I don't quite understand it. I was like, wow. Okay, here's what it tells me. Okay, here's kind of the way I look at it. The one thing that Roseman has done since he come back in 2016, he will not go all the way young. He won't do it. That's fine. The Seahawks didn't do it. They went young, but they kept Bobby Wagner around and KJ Wright around, but then went young. Roseman likes to keep a good mixture of veteran and younger players. Now they're going to get way younger. They haven't been this. They're not the way they're going to get young this year is something we haven't seen in many years. But they're not going all the way young. So what he's thinking is, okay, this year they've got Will Parks as an evaluation. Okay, Will Parks, Jalen Mills. The way they may not draft a safety this year, Geoff. If Parks, I didn't say that they won't. I didn't say that they won't.
Oh, you will.
I hear it in your voice because I know how pissed off you'll be. I like pissing you off. No, but look, if these guys work, they either get the safety, they could get it this year or next year, but they don't have to get it this year because they want to see the way these guys work. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the one thing that sticks out to me, Adam, is, and this is just me hypothesizing here, is that there was probably competition on the market for Rodney. He did have a good year last year. He's not old, like 34, 35. So apparently there might have been a team willing to give him 2 years or even 3, but the Eagles gave him 2 years with a little bit more money than he might have been able to get. I mean, safety is not, there weren't a ton of great safeties out there.
No, there weren't. And he got a great structure. My God, to get fully guaranteed money in year 2. This isn't $1 million, folks. It's a $375 is a lot. He is 30 in June. Great locker room guy, high character. But man, that surprises me. So
friend of the program, by the way. We got to mention friend of the podcast. He's been on with us in the live show before. Yeah,
good, really good guy. Now, what's going to happen here is this: he's going to. I think it's kind of what you had said. You said, why don't they just bring? Because I think you had said, why don't they? I think you had said back in January, why don't they just keep Malcolm for a year, or actually 2 years, and let Rodney go? Well, they did the opposite. They did, but they did keep one of the two of them. That's right. What they did, and Rodney's the younger mentor guy who will eventually hand off to someone. So what Mills and Parks do is they buy you time at safety. It doesn't mean that they won't draft one this year, but if they don't, they've got Mills and they've got Parks. Rudy Ford suffered he suffered an injury, an ankle injury, I think. They got Marcus Epps who did play a little bit, right? Big nickel. He had to because they didn't have anybody else.
he played all right. If you remember, he was on the other end of that DK Metcalf reception in the wild card game.
Good. Yeah, not good.
Yeah. But Darius Slay's deal, that was surprisingly interesting in that the year 1 hit is not substantial.
It is because it's like that because it's a 3-year extension. They would not redo his deal.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they could get out after the first year of the extension. It's 1 + 3. He's got the minimum base salary for this season at $1.05 million. That's fully guaranteed. His base salary next year is fully guaranteed of $12 million. They also got a $13 million signing bonus.
So wait, let's stop right there. You said his base salary next year of $12 million is fully guaranteed.
Right.
If he has a really bad year this year, that's going to be a big storyline next offseason.
Right, but you got to think, right, Geoff? He's only 29 this season. He just turned 29. He's only 30 through 2021. The structure is very favorable to the Eagles. They did a really good job. I'm assuming because they've been on this player for 2 years, that they probably had an idea what the landscape was. And at signing, I mean, it's still not a bad deal, but at signing, he's getting $26,050,000. That's actually a pretty favorable contract. Now, remember, the reason why the Eagles had a little leverage here is because he had a year left on his deal. If it was a brand new deal that he would get through free agency, they're paying him way more, even though he's 29. But they had leverage here in terms of negotiating a contract.
Right.
So they did well here. The Rodney McLeod one, I'm very surprised about year 2, but I somewhat understand it. Roby Coleman's deal is a veteran minimum. It's because he was still out there. This is his third team. He didn't have any leverage. Look, he has to show that he can do it. The way they explain to me is they're going in thinking he will win the nickel job. Like they're going in as he's the starter. That someone have to take away from him. Well, LeBlanc's not going to take it away from him.
Probably not. I mean, you never know, but probably not. You're right. I would agree with you on that.
Right, and then Hargrave's deal. Look, it was a very strong above market deal. He's going to average, his deal averages 13 a year. It's a typical Drew Rosenhaus contract. It's very straightforward, very solid. I mean, it's the crazy thing is, if you really look at it at signing, Geoff, he got very close to what Slay got. Let me see. Plus 12 point. Let's see. He's only $2 million, about $2 million off of what Slay got at signing. It's a 2-year structure, and they could get out after 2021. I mean, it's a lot of money for a guy you have to question, at least in year 1, how much playing time he's going to see. I assume the way they'll probably do it is Jackson will be the third D tackle, assuming he's ready for training camp whenever training camp starts. But the rotation we just don't know about, and Anthony Rush they really like. And then if Vinny comes back, Geoff, man, do they have versatility on their defensive line?
They do. And I'll just throw in real quick before we move on that Malik Jackson last year, we were surprised by this. The first game that they played him in, that's when he got hurt. They were using him as an edge rusher in nickel at times. Remember, we were wondering how they were going to make it all work with Jernigan and Cox and Malik Jackson and then all the edge rushers they have. Well, there were a couple of snaps there where we saw Malik Jackson line up on the edge. And I think I heard Howie say it in his conference call that Malik can play both inside. And now he's way better of an interior rusher.
He did with Jacksonville. He did with Jacksonville. I should say that he did. And when it's funny, I'm recalculating these numbers. It's almost hard to understand. Actually, this is how great Hargrave's deal was. He comes within just about $500,000, not $2 million, $500,000 from Slay's deal. Now, I understand that Slay, the reason why is because Slay had a year left on his deal where Hargrave was an unrestricted free agent.
Right.
I would have to ask Rosenhaus. He had to have other teams in it. What an incredible deal. I mean, Hargrave, and I'm not criticizing the Eagles. It's just a great deal.
And I'm sure he did. I mean, he's a young pass rusher, so I'm sure he had competition.
And he signed early. Right. So, wow. So that was it. I just want to make a mention of kind of where they are at contracts. And the Rodney one was like, wow, okay, well, and by the way, another reason why, before we move on here, you have to have a veteran at safety because of all the movement and everything that's going to go on without Malcolm there. You need someone to keep everything together, and Rodney's got to be that guy. So I get it.
Yeah, he's the new glue for the secondary.
Yeah.
All right, we're close to the end here. I want to stop right now just to thank our friends at PHLSportsNation.com as they continue to enhance the fan experience with all their coverage of the Eagles, the Sixers, the Flyers. The Phillies, even with sports gone or in a drought right now, they are still grinding out coverage and they're doing podcasts too. And so make sure you're checking out their work at PHLSportsNation.com. We thank them very much for being a good affiliate along with Inside the Birds. And, I don't even want to spend more than like 30 seconds to a minute on this, Adam. We talked last pod about, how they got LeGarrette Blount 2 years ago in May. I mean, I still think that later down the line, there's a chance to address that interior offensive line backup, that veteran backup, that running back backup that they might want to be looking at. I don't have a name right now that really jumps out at me, but I do think that those two areas are ones, and maybe even linebacker again, that they'll look to in your April-May signings. All
right, so I know, and I didn't address this rumor, LeSean McCoy rumor. Well, you saw McCoy and Djax talking about it.
Yeah.
The negative here is that because he was benched, he got benched, and he was actually for performance. He's just not the same player. He's at the end of the line here.
Yeah,
he was not active.
When you say benched, by the way, he was not active for the Super Bowl. Correct?
Exactly right. Yeah. So that's not a good sign. Right. He's in his 30s. That I wouldn't rule it out because they don't have a number 2 running back. And again, folks, Doug Peterson knows a lot more than I about what he wants to do, but Doug knows as well as I do, and so do everyone listening, that Miles Sanders is going to be their primary back. There's no committee. He's the guy.
Right.
Committee is not what they want. They want a 2-to-1 split. They're not looking to give Miles Sanders 10 to 12 touches a game. That's not what they want.
Right.
So LeSean McCoy could give you 5 to 7, but here's my issue though. If Sanders suffered an injury, he's going to be out through 3 games. Do you think LeSean McCoy's got enough left?
That's a great question.
Know.
But do you think they're in a position to find someone who's in free agency on the street who's young and has a lot of gas in the tank? I don't know.
The guy
I tend to think Boston Scott could then inherit a bigger role.
He could, but he's not a lead back. He's not a primary and first and second. The guy that I like, believe it or not, is with the Chiefs, and that is Spencer Ware, who won really good season. He's a fullback, could play running back, high character guy. Did have a bad knee injury a couple years ago, PCL sprain, but he's fine. He's an unrestricted free agent. He'd make a lot of sense. He would be the perfect backup because he could play on third down. He's younger than McCoy. Other than that, I mean, Bilal Powell's over 30. I don't think he could handle enough carries. I mentioned Ty Montgomery, who'd be a great fit. I'd love to see Ty Montgomery, the former receiver who's now running back. He was with the Jets last season. Isaiah Crowell. I actually talked to Isaiah Crowell, by the way, through DM. He's doing hell. He's over his, I think, Achilles injury.
Slid into his DMs, huh?
Yeah. It's funny. His name was out there. People were asking me, so I figured out he was following me. I'd ask him.
Nice job.
Yeah. Theo Riddick, he's just a third down back. That wouldn't work. Forget Kareem Hunt. He's restricted, and you know about the off the field stuff. Lamar Miller's come back with torn ACL. Forget that. Now Carlos Hyde's available.
It's not bad. That's a good name. He's played in a similar system with Kansas City.
He was with the Chiefs briefly, but the only problem is, why does he keep moving on from team to team to team to team to team?
Oh, he's not very good. That's why. I mean, he's fungible.
He's talented. Yeah, he's talented, but
yeah, he's okay. But I mean, you can find him.
Devontae Freeman. They're not going to want to spend anything on running back. I mean, they're really not.
Right.
So they're cash. Oh, one thing I want to mention before we get out of here, folks. We talked about the salary cap, they're in okay cap shape. But don't forget, they also have to pay the rookies, depending on what the rookie pool is.
Yep.
Typically between $5 and $6 million. Teams by now have severely stretched their cash budget. Cap is almost is just not important. It's cash budget. You have to have enough cash on hand that you were given from your owner.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never want to go back and ask your owner for more money, except there are certain circumstances you would do it. If a player you were not expected to be available became available, i.e. Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
But just when you talk about some free agents that might become available, or guys who you want the Eagles to trade for, you have to be careful because there's only so much you can pay these guys. Because Geoff talked about it earlier. It's not just this year. You have a budget for next year, man. These contracts, cash and cap, go way up next year, and you got to be careful.
Absolutely. All right, that's a good place to end it right there. So that's going to do it for Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Thank you to 97.3 ESPN, our affiliates. Make sure you're checking out the Sports Bash with Mike Gill from 2 to 6 every Monday and Friday. Of course, me and Eitan Shander from 12 to 2 p.m. the same. So make sure you're listening and download their free mobile app at 973ESPN.com. Also, a big thanks to Hunter Brody, helps put this thing together. Check out his webpage, Sports Talk with, check out his YouTube page, Sports Talk with Broads, and you can catch all of his takes, his very passionate takes on all of Philadelphia sports. And you can find him on Twitter at Broads81, where he puts out more of his work. So thank, as always, to Hunter Brody. And again, we thank everybody out there working hard, whether they're quarantined, whether they're working for the public right now. Everybody stay safe, hang in there. We'll get through this all together. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.